Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:12 p.m. Central. You're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM, New Orleans. And I've been told that we've been hitting about 900,000 every show lately, which that's pretty good.
Cool.
I don't know the statistics, but Joe has the network stuff and what countries it comes from, and there's a lot of weird ones in other countries. Those stats build it up. So I don't know. I'd like to see the layout of that paperwork, though, at some point. But we got Wham here with us tonight.
Hi.
Christina's going to be sitting in some. My fiance, Christina Giordano. She's here. And then when she sits down, I'll fix the camera. We got Ellen Evert Hopman here. How's it going, Ellen? Good to have you here.
Hey.
And first off, I ran a Facebook group called Führer Shitbird von Trumpelgooch for many years. And today I was finding myself going, maybe I should delete it before I end up in the gulag. That's today, right? I guess it was, something I felt like it was possible that he could win. I certainly didn't want him to, but just a creepy feeling the whole time. And of course, through my job and stuff that I have to see at work, I see a lot of his crowd, and I see a lot of these personalities online that are right wing, these crazy little right wing radio personalities. And I've stopped in their chat rooms, and there'll be like 50,000 people in there, all kissing his ass, and me going, Führer Shitbird von Trumpelgooch 2024. Like, I'll say stuff to be a troll just for fun, and they usually just ignore me or kick me out. But that's what scared me about it, is seeing all those people online, like 50,000 people listening to some, nitwit about whatever Q and blah, blah, blah. So part of me was like, oh God, he's going to win. But so it didn't really surprise me. But to me, I guess trying to figure it out, it feels like we're like going to be in Iran now, like we're Iraq or North Korea, and now we got to have Saddam, Orange Sherbet Saddam, and his two sons, Uday and Kuday, like Bill Maher made fun of them before. Hopefully not going to go around hitting up the village women and imprisonating them. But it's creepy. Like it is a dystopian nightmare, especially with all the stuff I see about what they talk about online. They pass around lists of executions and tribunals of the craziest things I've ever seen, of celebrities who are dead in Gitmo and they're alive, and they say they're clones. Like, this is the weirdest shit I've ever seen. They think JFK Jr. runs Q and he is alive. There's one Indian dude that says he's him and reincarnated, and they believe him. And then there's one dude that says he is him and he escaped MK Ultra, and they believe him. I still don't understand why they like Kennedy so much, but this is like the Twilight Zone. And I forget that Philip K. Dick show that I wanted to watch, with the Nazis actually win and come into power. I forget the name of it. I wanted to watch it, but I never got around to it. But that's what this is. Like, we're in a dystopian nightmare now. It already kind of felt like one, but now it's like really creepy. It's like Sauron one. It's weird because in that Rings of Power show that was on Amazon, and I enjoyed it. I like the Peter Jackson stuff a little bit better, but I didn't mind it. But in it, Sauron becomes he looks like an elf, and the dude that he's one of the elves that he's getting to make the rings to give to everybody to manipulate them and spread the Trumpisms. Basically, he shows that guy that makes the rings that's his prisoner, but the elf doesn't really know he's his prisoner. But he goes, look outside, and the elf guy looks outside, and it's beautiful, like villagers running around, kids, and it's beautiful outside. But what's really happening, the orcs are destroying that city, and Sauron showed him the opposite of that, so he'd keep working on the rings. Like, that was a weird metaphor for this on a lot of different levels. But we're going to get into this a lot more in the second hour, but good to have you here, Ellen, and good to have Wham here, who's going to have a lot to say about it as well. And if y'all just want to say a little bit about it, and then we'll get into the book and really get into it, just whatever you're comfortable doing with it. I think I'm still just like shell-shocked. Everyone is. How are you feeling about it, Ellen?
I'm in disbelief. I lived in Germany for 5 years. I went to school there. And in Germany, if you've ever lived there, if you turn on the TV, they were constantly showing footage of Auschwitz and World War II. And, the education is nonstop about Hitler. And they have, kids that grow up there now have a very clear idea of who Hitler was and the damage that he did. And in this country now, for half the country, Hitler seems to be something to aspire to. I mean, it's unreal. And as I mentioned to you before we came on, I was in a lengthy conversation today with a German woman who's married to a Hispanic man, and her daughter looks Hispanic, and her daughter is now afraid to go to the market. She's afraid to go outside because she thinks she's going to be attacked. And Trump isn't even in office, and it's already starting. And there's a lot of weird stuff, like the text messages that are going out to Black people telling them that they're going to be slaves again. There are guys on campuses telling women that they are going to be property, that they are property.
What?
This is what Trump has given permission to, the most toxic elements of society. And unfortunately, it's, the whole Trump campaign was geared towards men. It was geared towards young men. That's who they wanted to appeal to. And that's why the sexual innuendos and the violence and all that, it was all geared to appeal to the lowest common denominator. I'm not saying that all men are like that. I mean, a gentleman is a person who's kind to everybody. My mother used to say, that's what a gentleman is. And Trump is not a gentleman, and his followers are not gentlemen. They are not scholars and gentlemen, but he's given permission to those kind of people to be their absolute worst selves, and it's already coming out.
It's definitely scary for sure, creepy on so many different levels. I don't know. I think I just feel like you got hit by a bus. And of course, I see a lot of the stuff from the right already. They're showing liberals crying everywhere and passing the pictures around, and people in crowds crying and all the crap they do. And one of the weird things is, I don't remember the personality, but they're already saying some personality on the right's telling Democrats to drink poison because he's coming for them, like the leadership and stuff like that. It's like they want that to happen.
Yeah.
They want Hitler. That's what they want. Your Antichrist is here. You got him.
Yep.
You're going to live with the consequences after the sports team hoorah. My team's better than yours. Your team won, so you got your Antichrist superstar.
I was looking at the list of what Trump is hoping to accomplish, his list of goals. And one of the things that he wants to do, of course, is to bring back the Muslim ban, which you might recall in 2016, he wanted to have a Muslim ban and ban all Muslims from coming into the country. Well, if you think about that, if he's going to ban Muslims, that means he believes he has the power to decide what religion somebody can be. And he can ban a religion if he doesn't like it. And of course, the people that surround him are Christian nationalists, and I'm a pagan myself. I'm a Druid. So who's going to be next after the Muslims? I mean, pagans can't be far behind. That's what I'm thinking.
It is crazy. It's just too much at one time to take in. And then, of course, I was telling you about Eric that thinks he's Mabus, and he's been trying to give like that information to the White House, and someone from there met with him to hear it or something. Probably got put on some watch list. but well, anyway, let's get into the book some, and then we'll touch on this a little bit more later. some of my Celtic experiences, and I was raised Christian, and I've grown now after having UFO encounters that were strange into studying more things like Native American, shamanism and Norse. And I like to read about it a lot. I wouldn't say I'm like a big practitioner or anything, but I'll soak in everything I can, hear guests about it. And I find a lot of comfort in it. And sometimes the Christian roots, you try to get rid of them, but they always seem to like stick to you like an octopus trying to eat you, like Leviathan in the ocean, or the pirates. But I had some experiences once where I was reading that sort of stuff, like DJ Conway, and I remember that Lord of Light and Shadow book, and some stuff like that. And I actually had some experiences with some beings that were small in cloaks in the woods that were very strange, and a friend saw them. Mm-hmm. And they were like they weren't like Jawas, but they had like weird cloaks like that. They weren't fat, they were skinny, and you could not see their faces, but you could see that it was like 3 cloaked small beings. Mm-hmm. And they had a black box in front of them. And that black box, we've talked about it on the show a million times. I've always trying to figure out what that little black box was. But a cat actually jumped towards them and they vanished. And it was just a weird experience. And we were partying and stuff. It was when I was younger. But another person saw it as well. But at that time, I had been reading a lot of that kind of stuff. It was almost like they brought it down through reading it almost. Like that's opening the doors to it, I guess, or something. But is that the fairy, or have you ever come across anything like that, beings like that?
Well, what that sounds like is wood elves. They're called wood elves.
Huh.
And the best way to see them is to be out in an old growth forest. You're not going to see them if you're, in the middle of a city. They don't like that.
Interesting. I've never heard anyone call them that. What else can you tell us about them? I'm always trying to figure out who they were. What was that black box? What was that?
Well, I don't know what the black box was. Maybe they wanted to give you something. Give you a gift.
Wow. Freaked out and ran away after a while.
Well, that's the problem, that usually when we hear or see, I usually hear them, but I recently did see one. But when we see them, our first reaction is to scream and run away, right? It's like, oh my God, and I'm trying really hard to train myself not to do that, because maybe, if I can just be cool and keep quiet, maybe I'll learn something. But
yeah, wood elves, that's interesting. And who are they usually? Like, is that Norse, or are they in Celtic, or what, Druid stuff, or what are they? I mean, what's the background?
Well, they're everywhere. They're light. Well, there's light elves and then there's dark elves. But the light elves, usually they're wearing white. There's light around them. The dark elves are going to be dark. But that they're an aspect of nature. They're just on the astral plane, which is why we don't see them when we're walking down the street. But you have to be in you have to be slowed down. That's why if you've ever done a fast with Native American elders, which I highly recommend, but you got to do it with a genuine elder, not a fake elder. But if you do a real 4-day, no food, no water fast, I highly recommend it. And when I did that, one of the things you do is you state your intention, why you're doing this, right? So my intention was, because for 20 years at that time, 20 or 30 years, I'd been reading about the fairies, and I had never seen one. And I'd even spent the summer at Findhorn in Scotland, which is very famous for fairies, and I'd never seen a fairy. So I said, okay, that's what I want. And very quickly, on the very first day, and I wasn't thirsty and I wasn't hungry and I wasn't starving, but very quickly I heard them singing, like almost immediately. And ever since then, I make offerings to them. I give them gifts. And I never would see them. I would just hear them. But just a few weeks ago, I did see somebody in the house. She was about 3 feet tall, maybe no more than 3 feet tall. And she was wearing looked like clothes from the 1800s, maybe. And she wasn't paying any attention to me. She was just looking at stuff. And I had this basket on the table that had nail polish and hair clips and 2 watches. And she was absolutely enwrapped in that basket. I mean, it's like she was trying to figure it out, what it was. And she's just staring at it. And then I think I got scared is what happened. And as soon as I got scared, she disappeared. But I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to train myself not to do that, not to get scared. But.
And I know one of the first sections is what a druid is and is not. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know it gets complex, but so we just know what we're talking about. And the book is Celtic Druidry, Rituals, Techniques, and Magical Practices. Anybody wants to look it up? I know that's a lot.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a whole chapter about what is a druid, what a druid is not. There are many different kinds of druids. So what one person says is a druid, another person might say is not. And I try to go through all the different kinds of druids. I myself am what's called a Celtic Reconstructionist druid. What that means is that we study the old stories, the wisdom tales, the poetry. We also like archaeology, we like history, we like linguistics. We're always researching the old stuff. My group is called Tribe of the Oak. And if you're interested, you can study with us, tribeoftheoak.org. It doesn't cost anything to study with us. Every once in a while, if we need something like web hosting or something, we might ask. There's over 2,000 people now, but we might ask for donations. But nobody asks you for money. But anyway, we have a somewhat scholarly training program. We have beautiful lessons with old teachings and stories and poems and so on. Now, that's one kind of druid. There are other kinds of druids who say that if you love trees, that makes you a druid. Or if you love all you have to do is love nature and say, I'm a druid, and that makes you a druid. But, you know, the ancient druids spent 20 years studying how to be a druid, according to Julius Caesar. So we kind of feel that you need to put a few years in, and that's the way we look at it. Most people take 3 to 5 years, I would say, to go through the study program. And then we have lists of books, recommended reading and all that. You don't have to buy the books. You can get them online, used and so on, but you can buy them if you want. You can get them at the library. But there's some people who say that Druidism is just a philosophy. So you can be a Christian and a Druid. You can be Jewish and a Druid. You can, you know, be a Hindu and a Druid. You know, so there's many, many different kinds of Druids. But like I said, there's a whole chapter in the book, Celtic Druidry, that just goes through that.
And what's usually the initiationary stage of that? Does something happen that people say they want to, you know, oh, I'm a druid? I mean, what can happen spiritually with that? Or maybe your story that brought you into it? What was the catalyst?
Okay, when you say initiation, do you mean the beginning or the end?
Yeah, the beginning. The beginning.
Because for us, an initiate is somebody who's been through the entire training program, and then they do a ritual and they become an initiate. That's the way we would say it. But I would say, honestly, most people come to it because at some point they realize they have Celtic ancestors. I really think, especially for Americans, you know, Americans are really obsessed with looking into their ancestry, and you know, we're all trying to figure out where we come from, who we are. So I think that's what a lot of people come to when they realize that they're no longer Christian. That doesn't fit. So what are you? And then you realize, oh yeah, my ancestors were, you know, Scottish, Irish, or could be from France, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Ukraine. Those are all Celtic areas. Switzerland, Spain, Celtiberia. There's a big misunderstanding. A lot of people think Celtic means Irish, right? But it's actually everything from the west coast of France all the way to the Black Sea, north through Britain. Britain was Celtic. The Scots are certainly Celtic. And Britain was Celtic pretty much until the Romans changed things, and the Anglo-Saxons and all that. And Spain and Portugal, especially northern Spain and Portugal, that was all Celtic. Northern Italy was Celtic. So I think that's the motivation for most Americans. That's what I think.
And what are some of the? I mean, there's I have a lot. I have like Scottish, Welsh, and Irish. Like I got a
That's
mixture
all Celtic.
of it all.
So
Not sure how that happened.
Yeah,
a lot of fighting and wars and pillaging, I guess. But yeah, my ancestry, I did that, and I was just like everything, just about. So it's interesting. So that may be why I have some experiences too. I've wondered. That was one of the big things that we have a lot of interest in, is like traumatic events, how they bring on encounters, spiritual encounters and paranormal encounters. And we've had some guests on about that, how, trauma can bring on things like that. And that's the case with me. I had testicular cancer at 17 and had to go through chemo and all that. And then a year or so later, my dad died. And I started to have crazy experiences, and I had no interest in that at all, except like E.T. and Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers. That was my interest in that at all, when I was a kid. But I started to have those experiences, and it was from, I think trauma opens it up for sure. And that's why we do the show, to talk about the different encounters and stuff. But when it comes to Druidry, who are some of the main gods and goddesses that are there that most Druids know of or talk about, or they meditate to? Who are they?
Okay, well, again, in the book Celtic Druidry, I have another whole chapter. It's kind of long. And I try to go into the Gaulish gods and goddesses. So that's roughly what we would call France today. And I go into some of the Iberian gods and goddesses, which are lesser known. That's Spain and Portugal, as I mentioned. I go into Irish, British, and I can't remember. It's a big chapter, like I said. But the two most popular deities of the Celts, and this is in all Celtic areas, were Bridget and Lugh. And Bridget is even among the voodoo. They call her Maman Brigitte. She's everywhere. But Bridget and Lugh are both very bright, intelligent, active, fiery, and productive, deities. And they're both gods and goddesses of skill. Bridget is, the forge and poetry, smithcraft, healing, also motherhood. And Lugh, of course, is called master of every art, Samildana. He's everything: master goldsmith, master magician, master warrior. I mean, he's literally master of every art. But for some reason, those two were the most popular. And so if you look at a map of Europe, if you study the names of rivers and cities and so on, you'll find their name incorporated. So Lugh could be Lug, Clu, Lugus. Bridget could be Briga, Brigantia, Brigindo. I mean, you find them everywhere, Lugh and Bridget. And the attitude is very different from the Christian attitude towards, say, a saint, for example, would be that, you would pray to the saint and you would say, gee, I'm so bad, I really screwed up, and please help me, I'm weak, I'm terrible, and you're on your knees. That's not the way Celtic religion worked. The way Celtic religion worked was you had a deity, and what I like to say is the deity picks you. You don't pick the deity necessarily, although some people do. Usually the deity picks you. So you might be studying for a few years, and then you realize there's one deity that really speaks to you, you know, so you get chosen by that deity. And the idea is that you want to be just like them. So if your deity is, say you want to be a warrior, so you might have an altar to Lu, and Lu, of course, is master of every art. So you might say, I'm going to be a warrior just like you. Or if you want to be a poet, you might have an altar to Bridget, and I'm going to be a poet just like you, you know. That's the attitude.
Is he the sun, like a sun god?
No.
Oh, he's not.
No, that's a Victorian idea. He's not a sun god. In fact, in Celtic thinking, the sun is female. And what's interesting is the earth is female, the rivers are female, the sun is female, the moon also. It's all female. And so people say, well, what's the masculine? What's the role of the masculine? So the role of the masculine is to serve and protect the female. That's the correct role for the masculine. Not to control, not to, you know, bully. That's not what it's about. It's serve and protect. And that includes the earth. You're not here, if you're a man, you're not here to control the earth. You're here to serve and protect.
And hold on. Oh, I was making sure. My Boston Terrier was snoring, so sometimes I have to mute it when he does that, like, or move him into another room. But God, he's horrible at that too. Even my mom's room, he does it. But what was I going to say? Oh, is there any like a trickster or anything in their pantheon of gods or anything like that that's tricksterish?
Well, no, I mean, Loki is a Norse deity. We don't have really a Loki figure, but there's some humorous figures, like the Dagda, for example, who is the god of, say, you want to be a druid leader, you want to be the leader of a druid group or something, you're probably going to work with the Dagda at some point. He's the good god. He's the father god. He's the provider. But they said that his penis was so large that when he walked, it dragged behind him, and he had to have a cart just to hold his penis. That's how big it was.
Is that the dude of the picture, the big picture they drew on the ground? Is that the guy? That's it. I forget where it is, but it's Hercules, I think, or something. There's some line drawing on the ground of a dude with a big penis somewhere over there. I can't remember where. But that's crazy. Don't get us started on Napoleon's penis. Who was the other guy recently? I can't remember.
Well, the Dagda is associated, obviously, with fertility and with food. He has an inexhaustible cauldron of food, and he represents nature. He's Father Nature. And, you know, nature, if you know, like I do a lot of wild crafting. I just finished gathering all the acorns. I make acorn flour in the fall, you know. Nature is always providing. And if you know how to deal with it intelligently, the food is endless. There's always food from nature, as long as we don't destroy it. But that's the Dagda. He has this inexhaustible cauldron of food that never runs out. No matter how much food you take out of it, there's always food in there. And he has a staff that one end of it can kill you and one end of it can bring you back to life. And that's also like nature. If you don't know what you're doing and you go out in nature, you're going to die, you know. But if you do know what you're doing, it can heal you, you know, and you can find medicines and it can bring you back to life and all kinds of things, you know. So nature works both ways. But that's Father Nature, which is a different idea than our culture has.
Who are the Morrigan, and what belief system is that? Is that Celtic? Morrigan?
Yes, the Morrigan, Morrigan, Rigun. More
Okay.
means great. Rigun means queen, great queen.
Okay.
She's a triple goddess, and she's a battle goddess. So she's somebody that the soldiers would call on before they went into battle. She's personified as 3 ravens or 3 crows, and she appears as 3 women, or she can appear as 1 woman dressed in red, kneeling by a river, washing the clothes or the armor of those who are about to die. So if you're going into battle and you see this woman dressed in red down by the river washing what looks like your clothes, you're toast, basically. But it's interesting because when I was first starting out, which was literally 40 years ago, I was starting out as a druid. Bridget was the big goddess. And, as I said, she's all about smithcraft, healing, herbalism, poetry, writing. That's probably why I've written so many books, because she was working with me. But that she was the big goddess. Now the Morrigan is the big goddess among women. Girls, when they pick a deity or a deity picks them, it's the Morrigan. So things have really changed. Our culture has gotten, something really has happened. I mean, it's a battle goddess.
Interesting. And Philip Carr-Gomm, is that the guy that made like some druid oracles and stuff? That name sounds very familiar. Is that Philip Carr-Gomm? Did he make a druid oracle? Or I may be wrong.
He
But,
was the archdruid of the largest English druid order, Obad, for many years. I think since the 1980s. I have a book out called A Legacy of Druids. Well, anyway, it's called The Legacy of Druids. He wrote the foreword. If you're interested in interviews with British and Canadian druids and American druids, and they talk in depth about what they think a druid is and how they became druids and so on. And then Philip Carr-Gomm wrote the foreword to that, A Legacy of Druids, Conversations with Druid Leaders from the USA, Canada, and Britain. I think that's what it's called.
he has a druid animal oracle.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Those are very beautiful. I've used those a lot. I guess he did it with his wife, says a woman, but yeah, I have those. Those are great. I love those. Really well done. Is he still alive?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, he just retired, and he appointed an Irish woman to head the largest druid order. The largest English-based druid order is now run by a woman, which is great. And because, there's a lot of history there between the Irish and the English, so that's really great. And I myself recently stepped down. I was archdruid and the founder of Tribe of the Oak, and I recently stepped down and handed it off to somebody else, which I think that's a mark of success if you can do that.
What did you have to do all the time? Was it like Lord of the Rings or something not like that? What did you have to do during all that? It's a lot, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Like just your task and what you go about doing, like as a member of that, like a initiation. I mean, do you do stuff with groups and things like that, or you had to organize a lot of stuff? I was just trying to figure out the position, what you had to do.
Oh, you're asking me what I did?
Yes.
Oh God. Okay, for 40 years.
Wow.
Well, I have a long history. I started out in ADF, which is probably the largest American Druid order, at least it used to be. And I was one of the first members of that. And Isaac Bonowitz was a friend of mine, and he gave me my second circle initiation. So I was second circle in ADF, and there were only 30 people when I joined. And then they were an Indo-European Druid order, meaning that they felt that any European culture, you could be a Polish Druid, a Russian Druid, a Scandinavian Druid, a Norse Druid, like. And I knew from my own, I was born in Austria, and my mother used to talk about the Celts all the time. And I knew that the Druids were Celtic, that they were a class within Celtic society. So I was having kind of a hard time with Scandinavian Druids, and so me and 5 other people got together in 1986, I think. Yeah, 1986. And we sat down around the campfire and we said, hey, we want to create a Celtic Druid order. And that was a brand new idea at the time, a Celtic Druid order. Ooh, so we created the Henge of Keltria. And so I was a founder there, and I was vice president there for 9 years. And then I kept learning and learning, of course, reading and reading and learning and learning, and traveling to England and Ireland and Scotland and talking to Druids and whatnot. And I just wanted to go deeper into the Celtic study. So at one point I created a Yahoo list, which was called White Oak. And why was it called White Oak? Because I went outside and I was standing outside. I live in an oak forest, and I was standing outside and I was looking at the trees, and I said, what should we call it? And they said White Oak. And I said, okay. And then I found out years later that the largest white oak on the East Coast is 20 minutes from my house. And I didn't even know that. So that was like the chieftain tree for this area. But the trees told me. So we created this list, and for an entire year, all we did was talk about what is a Druid, what a Druid is not, what kind of things should Druids know, what books should they read, what kind of tools should they have, what should they wear, what should the rituals look like, what about ethics, can you be a convicted pedophile and still be a Druid? Like that, So we talked about that for an entire year, and then at the end of the year, we said, whoa, we have the costume, the rituals, the lessons, the books. We have everything, the rules. We figured it all out. We must be a Druid order. So we decided to create an order, and then it became the Order of White Oak. And there were 12 of us that self-initiated at winter solstice 1996. We did all-night vigils. That's what both Tribe of the Oak and White Oak do that. You stay up all night. We did an all-night vigil and self-initiated, and then we began training people. And I trained, I don't know, 18 or 19 people. I honestly don't have a list anymore, but I trained a lot of people, because each of the people that I trained took between 3 to 5 years usually. And that meant that I was in communication with them that whole time. And I had a job. I was working. I was writing books. I was teaching herb classes. And I was training Druids for no pay. Well, I mean, when I look back on my life, I must have been nuts. But seriously, because, anyway, I was always working 7 days a week. And I mean, when I look back on it, it was a very rich life. It's a very fulfilling life. But financially, it was not very fulfilling. I'm basically living on Social Security at this point, and a few royalties here and there. But anyway, so White Oak was kept going until 2014, I think, and then it collapsed. And if anybody's interested in the history of White Oak, Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota has a Druid archive. And all of our discussions are archived there because it was all printed out. All the Yahoo discussions, and all of our stuff is there. It's only for scholars. You have to be a scholar, a genuine scholar, but all the stuff is printed out, stored in acid-free boxes. And that college is important to Druids because that's where ADF got started. It started as RDNA, and then out of our Reformed Druids of North America were started at Carleton College, and then that ADF grew out of that. But anyway, so go to the Druid archives at Carleton College if you're interested in maybe writing a book or something.
That sounds like an interesting, a lot of reading. That's probably really good. And I'm curious, someone that's seen a lot of UFO stuff and had on big personalities, like from Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, to Jim Mars. A lot of them have passed away. Been doing this for a long time. I think it's like 18 years now. I've lost count. I feel like Rip Van Winkle with this. But there's people that, I had the UFO encounters, and then I said a prayer and had another one that was weird and with witnesses, and then I was having trouble getting interviews, and the next thing you know, I was interviewing some pretty big people that I used to see in like documentaries when I first started doing this. And it was like Stanton Friedman, Nick Pope, and Nick Redfern, William Burns from UFO Hunters. But a lot of those people, it seemed like that sighting somehow, I'm not going to say it seemed like the aliens helped hook me up with interviews or whatever it was. I'm just kind of curious from the traditions that you know of, does that subject ever come up? I always hear Gaelic is the star people language from like Whitley Strieber and stuff, but I'm just kind of curious, is it the fairy? What would it be considered in like Druidism? Does that ever come up at all?
They would be the fairies. They would be the fairies. I mean, there's an actual story that we have. My group that I founded in 2014, I didn't even get to that. In 2014, I founded Tribe of the Oak. But we like to focus on the old Irish material because we have these wonderful intact tales, and we have the laws, the Brehon laws, and we have stuff that was written down by monks, because for the Druids it was all oral, and the monks wrote it down, and that's a whole story there. But there is a story about the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, who were the people that were there right before the Celts. The Celts came from Spain, from Iberia, northern Spain, and they had a druid named Amergin, and basically he had to do all these invocations, and they I don't want to say invaded, because there weren't that many of them. It wasn't like they went in like the Romans and trashed the place. There were just a few of them, but they did eventually take over, and that's a whole other story. But among the Tuatha De Danann, the tribe of the people of Danu, Danu is a goddess. The story is that when they arrived, they flew in from the north, and they landed on a mountain in Ireland. And I love that story because, to me, I mean, when I read the story, it's pretty obvious,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're the fairies, and Lou and Bridget and the Dagda and the Morrigan, all these characters, they're all part of the tribe of Danu. They're all the Tuatha De Danann, and they flew in from the north and landed on a mountaintop. And they brought these magical, the magical cauldron of an inexhaustible cauldron of food with them, which reminds me of a replicator, from Star Trek. And Lou had a spear that whatever he aimed it at, it always hit. It couldn't fail, there were 4 treasures, but they had these magical treasures, and they flew in. So who were these people,
That's interesting. I know at one point in my life, I did something to attract a lot of it. And now I see some things, but not like I used to. Sometimes I will, though, but I call the older ones my golden oldies. There were some crazy, weird UFO stuff that I've never, I've had a lot of people I've lived with. Christina's seen something standing above me like an alien that she said was scary, that looked like it had a bug head or something that she thought was, may have been bad. but another roommate saw gray aliens carrying me out a window in his dreams, and then went out on his balcony and there was a UFO. So for some reason I've had a lot of it, and I still don't know why, really. You never do, but it's interesting when you compare it, some of it, to the fairy lore and stuff. I know there have been some people that have really gotten into that with the fairy lore and tying it together. So I think there's a connection there for sure. One of the big ones I've had is seeing completely sober in Florida down here at Silver Lake. Something told me to go outside, and I saw 2 beings of light leave my house, and I was completely sober. No weed, no booze, no nicotine, nothing. Completely sober. It was like they were in the house and flew into the heavens, like 2 just people made of light. And I've thought deceased loved ones. I've heard aliens. I've heard everything on the show, what they could be. I don't know what they were, but I know I get goosebumps when I talk about it. They're starting every time I mention it. And sometimes I wonder if it's us. That's what we are, when we're in our body, or out of it more when we die or something like that. But that's one of my big ones. Is there any shining beings of light in any of this lore? Anything like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I say fairies, there's many different kinds of fairies. Yeah, and some of them were described as the way people describe them. They said they were angels that fell out of heaven and landed on the earth. And Lucifer, of course, is one of them. And Lucifer just means light bringer.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting.
Yeah, they're beings of light, and they fell to earth, and now they live underground. And in Celtic tradition, the fairies and the ancestors live underground. That's where they are.
Well, I know we had you on for the Samhain. I used to say Sam Hain. I'm from Georgia. Sam Hain Halloween show. Samhain. I'm probably still messing it up, but I know we had you on for that book a while back when it first came out.
Yeah.
But it's been great to have you back. We can do a little bit of Trumpelgooch if you want, and then just let me know if you need to head out, whatever you're comfortable doing. Trumpelgooch time. But what's your website? What's your website for everybody too?
My website is just www.ellen, E-L-L-E-N, Evert, E-V as in Victor, E-R-T, Evert Hopman, H-O-P as in Paul, M-A-N, EllenEvertHopman.com.
All righty. And I don't know. I figured Kamala would win. I just figured they were going to pull an Obama with all that, and I guess they did not. It was like a hard tie, and then he had like a landslide into it where he just you're like, oh my God, like a shock. Gosh. Like I have a Mexican friend that likes him and voted for him, and I'm like, man, he's going to put your people in cages. What are you doing? I say stuff to him. It doesn't do any good. He's like, something about Kamala and Trump will get rid of the homo stuff, so that should tell you where he's coming from. But man, all the stuff
the homo stuff.
Yeah, get rid of that woke homo stuff.
Sorry.
Meanwhile, Trump's giving head on stage for some weird reason. Like, did you see? That was the craziest thing.
That was to appeal to young men. That's what that was all about.
That was crazy.
And they pulled out the young male vote, which was to counter Kamala's female vote, because Kamala had all the women. So they very consciously were as crude and rude as possible to attract young men.
I found out. I believe it. He knows what he's doing, unfortunately. But I know there was some story where Kamala's husband said something about like she puts her head down and worked hard. There was something to do with that too. Something Kamala's husband said that they took and slanted into something perverted when he was like, she's a hard worker and puts her head down. So of course they took it as blowing her way to the top. So that's something to do with that too. But they knew all of it, all the above for sure. I know we put up some pictures of him with Mussolini, the exact his face and that Mussolini dude dictator. And that's his name, Mussolini, right? But the same weird facial expressions, like the same weird, like I don't even know. But just I won't even try. I'll do us a favor. But weird. It's like he studies this stuff and wanks to it. All this weird dictator stuff. He wants to be
we
there.
know that he kept Mein Kampf, or he still keeps Mein Kampf, Hitler's book Mein Kampf, by his bedside. I mean, that's who he's been studying for years.
So what can stop him now from doing it? Nothing, unless like the military sees it and stands up to him or something. Or I mean, what can stop it? He's president of the United States. It's like it's like the Penguin from that new show with Colin Farrell. It's actually pretty good, where he's the Penguin on HBO. But that's what it's like, a Batman villain as president now. That's what it. But that show on HBO is actually pretty good. It's a spinoff of the newest Batman movie, but Colin Farrell should win an award for it. He don't even look like Colin Farrell, but he plays the Penguin in it. But it's basically like we have a Batman villain as the president, a criminal.
Yeah, a convicted felon and rapist. Convicted rapist, convicted felon. And I mean, I hope the censors don't come after us, but that's the truth. I mean, I'm not making it up.
It's fine. They probably will. How much is he going to change all that too? Like he's going to go after Facebook and all those, and they're going to like become his little propaganda things to survive him, probably, from being shut down.
And then what we'll have to do is we'll have to go to those other services. Other services will pop up. Others have already started to pop up. I personally know a lot of people who they still will use YouTube for, certain types of things, but they're actually, moving off YouTube into other services like Patreon and other things like that. So, as long as there is a demand for, I'm not trying to underestimate his, attempts to control things, but as long as there is a public demand somewhere for technologies that can be used to create certain types of communities or certain types of commerce even, it's going to exist. That's just the way humans are. And, in the past, these things would have been, more clandestine in a physical kind of way, like an underground, literally. That's what they've been referred to, or, resistance cells or whatever. But now we basically have endless bandwidth and a variety of different kinds of technologies. I work in technology, so that's why I don't have, for example, these terrible racist and sexist texts that were sent out, across the country in the past couple days. They're terrible. I mean, and they're and clearly they're inspired by, by the election. They also came from 3 distinct accounts, and I will guarantee you that the people that got the texts probably got the text, and I'm not trying to blame them for that. It's just a matter of educating people. They probably got those texts because they had compromised social media accounts at some point. I'm a data privacy specialist. So what I do is I help people clean up that stuff. And if you know how to protect yourself technologically, you can keep some of that stuff from happening, not only to yourself, but to other people. So for me, part of the clue for safety and for community is to make sure that people know what of their information is out there. So that, because there are ways of cleaning it up too. Know what your information is that's out there, and make sure that it's going to the places that you want it to go to. you know.
Well, the sad thing is that some of the recipients, or a lot of them, were middle school kids.
No, I know exactly who they were.
School kids.
I know exactly who they were. I'm not trying to diminish the emotional impact.
Yeah.
The point is that young people in particular don't have an understanding of how important their information is.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes their parents don't. And so this is kind of like a wake-up call for people who need, who, you know, taking care of your data can provide you another level of safety and security online.
Yeah, the sad thing for me is that Facebook, I know Facebook people say that, you know, only old people use Facebook, but there's billions of people on Facebook.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So if you're trying to reach people, or you're trying to talk about your book, for example, Facebook is incredibly useful. Going to some of the new, smaller things, you know, it's going to be harder for people to find each other.
I agree, but that's why. But even then, there are safer and unsafer ways to use social media. Because what a lot of people do, and I know this because you know I work in K through 12, so I know exactly what these kids do. What they do is they'll have a phone, like an iPhone or an Android, and they'll have their social media apps on it, and they'll have what's called a single sign-on, which is when they access their phone, all of their passwords and everything are automatically signed into, okay? And if your phone isn't encrypted, then what that means is that all of the information that is contained within all of those apps and your phone is available to anyone who wants to access it. And so, and there are ways of actually using the apps and using the phone so that becomes very, very difficult to do. But people are not taught how to do that because they just want to use it. You know what I mean? They just want to grab the phone and they want to do it. And encrypting your phone or reducing the amount of information that you make available on your phone or in these apps, that doesn't decrease your ability to reach out. What it does is it filters the amount of information that is available to be stolen. That's what it does. But it doesn't take a lot of time to do things like that. Like most people who have smartphones right now, if you go to your settings, the vast majority of smartphones, I use an iPhone because they come pre-encrypted. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say the company should be responsible for that.
Well, yeah, but U.S. privacy laws do not require that. So what you need to do with your Android, if you have an Android smartphone, what you need to do is you need to go to your settings and see whether you have the option to encrypt. Most smartphones now do, and you just plug your phone in, punch the button, and it takes a couple hours to do it, and it won't look any different to you, but if somebody tried to access your phone, they wouldn't be able to do that. Now, iPhones come pre-encrypted because Apple has what's called privacy by design. So unless you have a really ancient iPhone, but the newer iPhones are a lot better. But anyway, you know, so I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's like I'm not blaming those middle school kids at all. I mean, not at all. They're just kids, you know, and they're not taught how to use their devices safely. But most Americans aren't. So that's why, you know, you have so much fraud and everything. It's you know, there's still a tendency for people to use, you know, short passwords and the same passwords for multiple accounts. And that makes it really, really easy for information to be stolen and to be used. So, you know, but there are things that can be done other than just, I mean, all the other things need to be done too, you know, all the other types of community building and stuff like that. But I have great faith in the ingenuity of people. because, like, so when Trump says things like, I wish that I had generals like Hitler did. Well, he's speaking of a particular group of generals, and actually the people he's speaking of weren't specifically generals. The people who constituted the core of resistance against him were in the Abwehr, and they were people that were in German intelligence, and they constituted some of the highest ranking generals, aristocracy, and a number of other people who, because of their positions, they were able to do lots of things. They were able to provide information to the Allies. They were able to undermine a lot of. I'm not trying to say that Germany didn't do terrible things. Obviously, they did. But whenever I hear Trump say that, I'm like, oh, which generals are you thinking about? The ones who spearheaded the efforts to spirit as many Jews out of Germany as possible and Austria as possible. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, there were 22 attempts on your life, buddy. You know what I mean? So it's like, so which generals are you talking about? So, that's what I mean. It's like, I'm, without trying to diminish the damage, the malign nature of Trump, and the poison that he spreads everywhere. It's very important not to let that discourage us from understanding that in his instability there is opportunity at every moment to resist, and those moments need to be taken all the time, whether they are physical, whether they are political, whether they are personal, because different people have, different abilities. Not everybody can do the same thing. But Hitler in his memoirs basically said that if there had been more resistance, the Nazi Party would not have succeeded to the level that it did. So it's really important that even in the face of danger, that this resistance needs to happen. Not everybody can do that, depending on, again, who they are, where they are, what they're doing. But the thing you need to most resist is fear. The paralyzing fear. It's okay to have grief. It's okay to feel icky. This is icky. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is like really sticky icky. It's really yuck. That is a perfectly legitimate response. But then you just have to dig down and you just have to resist. I mean, what do you think Native Americans have been doing? What do you think the Underground Railroad was about? Mm-hmm. These are the kinds of things that Americans need to remember and take seriously. And
one of the things among all the horrible things, but one of the things that Trump and his followers want to do is they want to get rid of the people in the government that are, that are scientists, that are experts, that are trained, that are educated. They want to get rid of all those people and put in their MAGA loyalists. Right. Well, there's a wonderful group called the Union of Concerned Scientists. Mm-hmm. I urge everybody to look up because you can subscribe to their newsletters and so on. But the Union of Concerned Scientists is already banding together to try to figure out how to protect science and promote science in the face of what's coming.
Oh yeah. Well, and also, like there's a group that organized during the first Trump administration that was called the Alternate Park Service, because Trump turned off, the Park Service's original Twitter accounts and stuff like that, because they were federal accounts, so he could turn them off. So they started their own, and they've been reorganizing it, and they've been sending stuff out. And, I mean, I think that the most difficult thing that people have to sort of wrap their mind around, and this is what's hard. I think this is what is the most scary, is the very real possibility that, in resistance, there's always the hope for a certain set of outcomes. Just like in magic, there's a hope for a certain set of outcomes. But to some degree, you have to let go of an attachment to certain kinds of outcomes, because there are lots of things at play. It isn't just a matter of what we do with Trump and what we do with each other. It's also a matter of like what might happen in the world because of climate change, or what might happen with foreign powers who decide to take advantage of this situation, economically or politically. So we really don't, there's a lot of things that are at play. And so it's important. I don't know if you're familiar with the author Octavia Butler, but she wrote a couple of novels in the early 1990s. One is called The Parable of the Sower, and the other is called The Parable of the Talents. And yes, they are references to biblical stories. But in fact, what's scary is that she was writing in the 90s, but her stories were actually referencing the 2020s and the 2030s. And in her stories, and it's following the account of a young Black woman named Lauren. And basically by 2030, what has happened in the United States is that after a series of economic disasters and some climate crises and the rise of the rise, and this is the God's honest truth, the rise of a political leader, a theocratic leader in the United States who wanted to, quote, make America great again. This is not a joke. I mean, science fiction is prophecy oftentimes.
Well, in Germany, they were talking about making Germany great again.
Right. The Eternal Reich. But anyway, what happened in this story was that the actual federated nature of the nation of the United States collapses. And it collapses into several regions. And in order to try to mop up the mess and keep their own boats afloat, basically where the federal government no longer works, corporations step in to sort of sort out the rest of the mess. And in the midst of this, there's a couple of really bad pandemics. And one of these pandemics actually affects people's minds. So they become kind of crazy and weird and paranoid. Now, she didn't know about the internet when she was writing. So I read it as the internet, and as social media and all that kind of stuff. But it's basically the story of how this young woman loses her family to a mob and then has to make her way in the world, in this world that has collapsed, and the communities that she finds, and the philosophy, kind of a spiritual philosophy that she develops in order to sort of keep her sanity, but also to help her build her dream community. And I wouldn't say it's a happy story. It doesn't have a happy ever after ending. Octavia Butler tended not to believe in those, so she didn't write those that way. But there's also a lot of hope and a lot of really interesting kind of insights in those books about how people can create community out of some really difficult circumstances and work to better their lives and the lives of people around them. So I always recommend that book, those two books. One is Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. I've been thinking a lot about, ever since the pandemic, I've been thinking a lot about those books. So anyway, I I've never been a registered Democrat. I'm an independent. And you know, I was not surprised that Trump won because I didn't think that Kamala ran that great of a campaign. And I've believed that the Dems have been lost for a little while about what to do.
Well, she only had 3 months.
Exactly, and that was part of it too. Is that she only had 90 days. Yeah. She wasn't vetted through a primary process. She was just kind of, you know, the way a lot of people felt was she's just kind of shoved on the American people in a lot of ways, and I don't blame her for that. And I do think that the media was unfair to her. I mean, I tell my friends all the time, never, 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 never underestimate the levels of kind of nascent and sometimes overt racism, misogyny, and just plain stupid in this country. So, you know, those things played a part too. But you know, it's done. So we have to move on. We have to move to the next steps of what each of us individually and collectively are going to do with the reality that we are in. And
the biggest thing is it's like you don't feel like you even have the strength to deal with it. Like at this point.
Well, you just have to. You just have to have the strength to deal with it. I mean, it's like I'm in my 60s. I would love to be able to retire. I don't think that I will be able to retire. So, you know, the next best thing is that, you know, I'm just a crabby person, but the next best thing is that I just hope that, you know, I don't die in some rude, horrible, and painful way. That's kind of the way I feel about it. It's like, you know.
I was sharing the Union of Concerned Scientists site on Facebook, and I highlighted it and then hit the everyone function for the group. If you want to check that out, it's UCSUSA.org, UCSUSA.org. And I just shared that on Facebook. So
yeah, and they have a great action alert newsletter. And every time a bill is coming up in Congress that needs public input, they'll let you know. You know, if you can just shoot a letter to your senator or your congressperson or whatever, they'll let you know. And these are bills having to do with the environment,
right,
with climate change. I mean, all having to do with science, you know. So I highly recommend that people look into that.
Yeah, there is, you know, as long as there is an EPA, God help us, as long as there's an EPA, there is a requirement, a legal requirement that the public be provided a certain amount of commentary time. Mm-hmm. And, you know, depending on what the EPA project is, or the Army Corps of Engineers, if they're involved in something, you have to do that too. And I only know that because, you know, I live right by the Hudson River. So there's always some kind of EPA or Army Corps of Engineer thing going on here to try to clean up the river or to try to do flood damage control or whatever. If locally you find out about that, something like that through an organization like this, go to the meetings and raise hell. That actually has an effect, but you have to go. You have to go to the meetings and raise hell. You know.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, you got anything coming up that you're cooking up book wise that you can tell us about, or you can't talk about it yet?
Well, if you go to my website, EllenEvertHopman.com, I have an event section. And I do have a talk coming up December 2nd. I'm going to be talking about the sacred herbs of Yule and Christmas. But I'm going to be talking about things like werewolves and the spirits of the winter season, things like that. But it's an online discussion. It's free. So if you just go to EllenEvertHopman.com, you should see a link. And I just did a conference called Ancestral Pathways, I think, which it's by donation, but all the talks are recorded. So if you donate any amount, you can watch the talks at your leisure from now until forever, So those are the kind of things that I'm doing these days at the moment.
And we've done some Dogman shows in the paranormal, and those get pretty weird. Like there's some weird stuff with that. Like there's a Dogman Triangle Texas Encounter place, a whole documentary and books, Aaron Deese from Small Town Monsters, and like witnesses who are actually like picking up weird, crazy werewolf things. Of course, there was Linda Godfrey and a bunch of, she was serious. She passed away not too long ago on that subject. That was just Beast of Bray Road. And so it's something in paranormal that comes up a lot.
Werewolves get more and more active as the winter comes in, and around the winter solstice is their most active time. And I'm gonna be talking about that a little bit and how to protect yourself.
Well, what the hell are they?
I need to go. I actually need to feed the cats. So
I understand. That's what I was doing. Then you said werewolves, but yeah, but yeah, it's been great. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. Keep us in the loop on future projects, and thank you so much. And stay safe in this weird handmaiden's crap tale.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Good
bye.
night.
Bye.
Well, I just want to tell the Trump administration a personal message from Church of Mabus radio show. And that personal message comes at a cost of freedom. And freedom is a word, like they say in the song. And I just want to say that if you do go full Hitler, you can shampoo my crotch and I won't enjoy it. So kiss our asses. Thank you.
Yeah. pretty much.
Going to the gulag, baby.
Pretty much.
If it gets that bad, death seems like a party to me. Like, let's just go ahead and get it over with. Book my appointment. It's coming anyway. It's going to keep getting that crappy. Just go ahead and do it. It's going to happen anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, I guess maybe I feel a little bit differently about things. I do feel quite a bit differently about things than the first time he was selected. And it's really because, I mean, the one good thing that Biden did for me this time around is that, I mean, I would have had it done a different way, but I'll take it any way I can get, is that I had applied through that that public service loan forgiveness program. And I had been in that for a while. And then under the first Trump, I got thrown out of it like a lot of people did. And so, when Biden came in, he reinstated it, and you had to apply. I mean, it was complicated. You had to apply for a certain, within a certain period of time and get your application in. But I was one of like 70,000 people that the Department of Education did an extended investigation on, that they found that the service provider who was supposedly servicing our loans in that program was screwing up purposely, was doing all kinds of BS stuff, illegal stuff, not following the guidelines the Department of Education had put down, which the Department of Education had the right to put down. And this is one. And so along with about 70,000 other people, my loan was one that was forgiven. So, and it's not, this is, it's part of the reason why there hasn't been like any legal challenge to this particular program, is because it is one of the forgiveness programs that Congress did create back in the second Bush administration, that Congress actually created and passed. So they can't use the idea, the president is just trying to be too powerful and this needs to go to Congress, because Congress created it. So I'm not in debt now. So it's like there's nothing that they can really hold over me, You know what I mean? There's no way they can threaten me. I don't have any assets that they can take. I can just be as rude as I want to be, and I don't care anymore. So it's like,
I understand. I had a crazy thing happen to where I went to Kaplan University for a bachelor's in communication science, and I graduated, and they never sent me anything about like a diploma or anything weird.
right.
And apparently I owe $80,000, and I just put it on like forbearance for a while, which I don't know how long that'll last. But I haven't paid them at all. It's been a million years ago. But listen to this. This is the weird part. Purdue University bought Kaplan, and Kaplan shut down now. And there's like this closed Kaplan site or something crazy where you can go to. And I tried to get my transcriptions, and I can't get them because I don't remember my student number. So I don't even know who to go to get my student number. It's like the weirdest thing I owe $80,000 for. It's like,
Yeah, $80,000, but you don't even remember. It's like
I don't even remember.
I don't even remember going to that school. I don't remember. Was that in another reality? Did I go to that school?
Like that. And I've totally just ignored paying it, and now it's, I guess, biting me on my ass, and then they let me forbear it a little. So I don't know what the hell's happening. I'll have to try to find my student number to get my transcript. I can't even prove I went there to use it for anything. Just seems crazy. I graduated though. I'm surprised I did that. But they didn't send me anything like a diploma. Maybe you had to pay the $80,000 first. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure that ultimately it probably got written off somewhere. And if I remember Kaplan University, I mean, what it was one of those for-profit colleges, or something like that. So a lot of that debt for those were discharged because they were found, those degrees were found to be kind of a racket. They would charge people lots of money for them, and nobody was able to actually, use the degree for anything. And yet they would come out of them and, gobs and tens of thousands of dollars.
No, I need to see if there's like a class action lawsuit or something. Because I've heard that some girl told me our degrees may not even be accredited anymore or something weird.
Yeah, well, that's a possibility too. If it's been a long time, and especially if it was like what's considered a trade school, it's quite possible that nothing that you did would count. I said that sounds really awful, but it's true. It's very true. I mean, I remember when I was looking to possibly when I first moved up here to New York, I was thinking about possibly going into, I think I've mentioned this at some point in the past, I was thinking about going into mortuary science. And so I was looking at different schools to do that. And there is a school up near Albany that's a community college that does have, the first 2 years of a mortuary science degree. And then from there, you can matriculate into one of the larger mortuary science schools. But when I went up there to check on them, they were going to make me take all of these English classes and stuff. And I was like, I've written books. I'm not going to take an English class. It's like, I've taught world history. I am not going to take world history. It's just, forget it. I'm just not going to do that. Not going to satisfy your weird little requirements.
I thought about doing that at one point too, and I knew I shouldn't because that would have depressed me or something. Like I already deal with depression, so seeing that every day would probably have been really bad.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I mean, there would be some things that would bother me, like
bad
when
stuff.
when people come and talk to you about, they have a pretty good, at least the programs that I was in, they had a pretty good system of having people who actually do it come in and talk to you about the things that are hard. You know, like one of the things that's hard is embalming a child, you know, so a child who's died or someone who has been murdered. So especially if it's a kid, some of those things are, you know, there are hard cases. But for me, the body itself isn't difficult, you know, because the person is gone. You know, who they were is gone. It's just the shell there. And so it's a matter of trying to respect that.
Oh my God. Roseanne just popped up on my screen wearing a QAnon hat live on her podcast.
Roseanne? Oh my God. Oh my
She
God.
has her own radio thing and she has all this crazy stuff on it. Her craze that revolves around that QAnon crap on Rumble. I don't listen to it. I just see it. Her title tonight is MAGA Bitches. That's the title of her show, MAGA Bitches. That's the exact title for her show tonight. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, well, you know, it gains her an audience, and by virtue of that, she makes a living. And that's really kind of what it boils down to.
Yep. She buys into it though. I think she
well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure she does. It's like, so what?
Yeah, true.
You know, it's like lots of people buy into lots of things, you know.
Do you think it's gonna? There are checks and balances to keep Trump from going full dictator, aren't there? What are some of the protections?
Well, I mean, at least in theory, there are. He's, you know, in theory, there are. It's actually harder to completely. I mean, even Hitler. I was explaining this to somebody this evening. Even Hitler could not completely dismantle the Reichstag after, you know, almost a decade of being in power, or over a decade of being in power. What he ended up eventually doing was creating a parallel hierarchy sort of next to the Reichstag. The Reichstag was the traditional, you know, German government. And the reason why he did that was because even though he wanted lackeys around him who could do certain kinds of things, there were also certain ways in which a government just has to kind of run, you know what I mean? And even though they want to get rid of, you know, federal workers as a class and sort of just replace them with loyalists, the problem with that is that the people that they put in those places may not know how to do those jobs. I mean, even though he wants to, you know, destroy the federal government or the deep state or whatever the hell it is he thinks he wants to do, I seriously doubt that anything he does is going to touch the CIA, for one thing. That they will not permit it. And the second thing is that you still have to have people that can function in certain areas. Like you have to have people that can function in banking and in you know, just the infrastructure of government. So it's actually more difficult to do some of what he's talking about quickly. It can be done, but it will take time to do it. And there's going to be fist fights about it and lawsuits about it from day one. So, you know, What's really at risk for the United States is not whatever government he sets up, other than the fact that, it could, and see, this is what people who voted for him don't understand, is that, say, for example, they dismantle the Department of Education, rather than just try to reform it in certain ways. But if they tried to dismantle it entirely, well, almost all states, including, the states that overwhelmingly voted him in, all of them depend on federal funding for their schools, for their public schools. And a lot of state jobs depend on, those good, dependable state government jobs depend on the federal jobs that help to underwrite and support them. So if you just kind of, destroy that federal infrastructure, you basically are threatening your public schools, you're threatening your own state job. It's just bizarre. It's like there's this disjunct, this inability to understand that how your life is connected already to these large structures. And maybe that's what it takes for Americans to realize, the government, even though we experience the government as being like way out here, the fact is that it's right in our faces all the time. So I think that the real danger, that's the physical danger, but the other danger is more of a psychological danger. It's that fear of not knowing who your neighbor is, who you can trust, who might hurt you, where your community is. And lots of people feel that, it's not just queer people who might feel that way. There are a lot of rural people who feel that way. Rural people don't like urban people, and yet they depend on each other entirely. I came from the Midwest, from a fairly rural area, and now I'm living in kind of what is an extended suburbia in the Mid-Hudson Valley. And I can tell you that people here know virtually nothing about Kansas, and people in Kansas know virtually nothing about New York, other than what they see on TV. So it's kind of like, and we're all being made to be potential enemies of each other. And so part of the only way to solve that is to quit listening to social media. Turn the damn TV off, go out and try to talk to your neighbor, even if your neighbor seems kind of odious, even if they seem kind of weird, see what kinds of connections you can make with people. Wherever you are, you're not going to be able to connect with everyone, but nobody wants to connect with everyone. But unless we get past these weird tunnels that the Democrats and the Republicans have put us into, and certainly the billionaires have put us into, there's just absolutely no way we're going to get out of this without some real hurt, psychological and physical. It's. The real question is, why are we letting billionaires run our lives? That's the real question.
4 years. Wow. This is horror. Horror at its finest, for sure. The mouth that shouldn't be. I keep thinking about that. There's some meme of Trump, and they're comparing him to The Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing, and it says the mouth that shouldn't be. It's like this creepy picture of him.
Yeah.
I'm just so burned out with everything.
Well, and I can guarantee you that if Elon Musk, first of all, Elon Musk has to be, before he gets a cabinet position, he has to be confirmed by the Senate. This is what Trump doesn't understand, and I think most American people don't understand who want him to do this. It's be confirmed by the Senate. He can't just stick him in a spot. I guess he could get advice from him to do things, but Elon Musk is not going to have the power to actually do anything unless he's confirmed by the Senate. And if he actually does the austerity measures that he claims he's going to do, there's going to be a riot among American workers almost, within a year, because that will put the entire country sort of down the same road that Venezuela went. And it's going to be crazy. Americans won't stand for it. Especially the Americans who voted him in. So
I would think the military would go crazy on him if he started acting too crazy.
I think that I think it's going to get weird, and I think there's going to be damage, and I think it's all going to be harder to do than they think, because Americans, we don't have an authoritarian tradition. We don't actually like to be told what to do, as a nation. And we don't have a lot of patience with privation, with people taking things from us. So, it'll be interesting to see how it all splits up.
I just saw Tony Todd, Candyman horror icon, also known for Platoon and Star Trek, dies at 69. Tony Todd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, he just died, Tommy Todd?
Yeah, just died.
Oh,
it just came out 21 minutes ago. And
look him up.
Hawaii-O, Xena Warrior Princess, Young Justice. He was in The Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in Deep Space Nine. Yeah, he there he is, Tony
Candyman
Todd.
is my biggest one that I know him from. Candyman.
Yeah. No, he was. Oh, that's too bad.
Who was he in Star Trek? Did he play an alien?
Yeah, he was in. He was in. Let me see here. He was in Deep Space Nine. I'm trying to remember who he played in Deep Space Nine. Oh yeah, he played a Worf's brother, Kern, in Deep Space Nine, which was a recurring role. And then he played an adult Jake Sisko in a wonderful episode called The Visitor. And he played an Alpha Hirogen in Star Trek Voyager. Yeah, he also he played he was in a Babylon 5 a TV film, the one called Called to Arms.
Yeah. They did a Babylon 5 cartoon recently. Knew that some kind of Babylon 5 movie, like in a cartoon form.
Yeah, I have it.
Is that any good?
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, it's hard because almost half of the original cast has died.
Yeah.
Including some of the most major characters like Delenn. So, Mira, who, it's a woman who plays her has to do a different voice. So I think that's part of the reason why they haven't done like sort of a remake of it in any specific way, because so many of the original cast have died. It would just be too difficult to do. So, but yeah, I mean, it's an okay story. It's not a happy story. It's a sad story. Basically what it is it's a kind of retrospective, and it uses the idea of parallel universes to kind of provide a retrospective of some of the themes that were present in Babylon 5 towards the end of its run, and that sort of bled over into Crusade, that short series that they tried to start that was a spinoff called Crusade, but that was axed before the first season was even done. And so if you watch it, you can't be a person who doesn't know about the Babylon 5 universe and watch it and understand it. You have to know what the storylines are. And
I haven't watched it, but I actually have it. I mean, I need to watch it. I just so many of them, I got to really be dedicated. But as far as the guy that did the new Battlestar Galactica, I don't know his name, but it was supposedly pretty good.
You mean Ron Moore?
I guess so. I've never watched it, but it's one of those things I have them. I just need to get around to it one year. But I've read that he's doing a new series called God of War, which is based on that video game God of War. That's actually really good. That's about this Greek dude that gets pissed off at all the Greek gods and starts hunting them down and killing them because they did something to him that pissed him off with his woman or something. But it's really good series. That's they're video games, but really good, creatures and Zeus and gods in it and craziness. But the cool thing about God of War, that guy's doing it now. He's going to be the one doing the new God of War on the Amazon. But anyway, at some point, Kratos, the main character, enters the Norse world after the Greek. So that's going to be pretty interesting. He's going to start off with the Greek, and then I guess at some point get to the Norse world where he has to start kicking the Norse gods' asses. And then he actually tutors Loki as a child in it. And it's like a father figure to Loki as a child. So it's pretty interesting. But that's the Battlestar Galactica dudes doing that. Well, next week is Richard Delgado, the Dracula Transylvania Tarot. So lots of Dracula, lots of Vlad the Impaler. We'll be talking about that heavily. So, all right, everybody, you're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. Thanks, Wham. Thanks to Ellen. Christina has a Betty Page show coming up at some point, the 22nd. And Mark Eddy may be sitting in there. But everybody have a good weekend. I just feel drained and crappy. I did find some cool blood pressure tea that's supposed to help, and it actually does help with my blood pressure off Amazon. It has great reviews, but it's kind of weird. But it actually works. I had 2 glasses of it, and I felt like I was going to pass out from low blood pressure.
Well, just rest. It's been a highly stressful week, and regardless of what's coming, if we rest, you'll be better able to face it.
After they kill the body, what else can they do?
Not much.
All right. Everybody have a good weekend. Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye. All righty. Just going to get some rest. Tired. Everybody get some rest out there. See, the one thing you got to realize about me, even though the Trump thing kind of annoys me on a lot of levels, I actually am involved in a business side that of people and things that will probably make more money, which makes me make more money from him winning. So there's lots of flip sides to everything, if you know what I mean. Basically, him winning propels the earnings of the business that I work at. It's not my business, but anywho, it's all got a flip side, flip of the coin. Good night, everybody.